I know. That's fine. All right. Um, Good afternoon. I'd like to call the Tuesday, May 17th, 2022 meeting of Moorhead Public Service Commission to order. Please note that Commissioner Heidi Duran will be participating in this meeting via interactive television from her address at 3625 22nd Avenue South in Moorhead, Minnesota 56560, which location is open and accessible to the public during this meeting. Commissioner Joel Paulson will be participating in this meeting via interactive television from the Holiday Inn located at 1805 Hotel Plaza Boulevard, Lake Buena Vista, Florida, zip code 32830, which location is open and accessible to the public during the meeting. I'd entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
I have a motion by McDougall, seconded by Daly, to approve the meeting's agenda. All in, no, I got it. Daly, McDougall,
Yes.
Durand, Paulson, they'll be joining us momentarily. Hendrickson,
Yes.
Thompson, yes. Okay, I now entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Daly, seconded by Hendrickson, to approve the consent agenda. Discussion? Seeing none. Daly,
Yes.
McDougall,
Yes.
Hendrickson,
Yes.
Paulson, Duran. Again, they'll be joining us shortly. Customers to be heard, recognitions. I forgot to note that customers wishing to address the commission for items that are not on the agenda, we ask that they fill out this request to speak form located in the back of the room and give it to the administrative assistant. Customers wishing to address the commission regarding a specific agenda item other than the rate hearings will be given an opportunity during the discussion of that item. Each customer will be given 3 minutes to address the commission. We are here to listen. Any follow-up or feedback will be done by email, and anything that cannot be resolved this evening. I see no customers waiting to be heard. And are there any recognitions? I'll wait a second. Okay, Mr. Schmidt, any recognitions?
No recognitions.
Okay, thank you. Old business, commission, any old business? And moving on, reports, city council, Mr. Hendrickson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a couple short things. We had a public hearing at the city council meeting for updates to the Macaria first and second editions. I think they're doing street maintenance and pavement control on that. And then we had a public hearing for the 7th and 8th Street mill and overlay, and I think MPS has something. I don't know if they're replacing water lines there or not, but and that one did also pass. So that's what we basically did for the city council meeting. It was a short council meeting. We had and I came in late, so I'm kind of sketchy on the details, but everything passed that affected MPS. So that's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Public Service Commission? Any meetings? No? General Manager's report, Mr. Schmidt.
Sure. I'll start here, and then I'm going to have Jake come up in a little bit, and then I'll close it out as well. So again, just want to report on the first quarter of our strategic plan update for 2022. Again, last year, based on recommendations from most, if not all, MPS staff, we changed up our strategic directions. Those are community, our team, water, electric, finance, and innovation. With those, I've got a couple of details within the report. Under community, we've had a couple contacts with some of our large customers, that's MSUM and Concordia, and we did do an update to our website, so it's a little bit more user-friendly and accessible to mobile devices is better as well, too. So more adjustments to come on that as we continue to tweak that. Our team, again, still working on the classification and compensation study. That's been going on since August of 2020. Jerry and I just provided some updates this week back to them based on some questions they had. Again, the commission approved the employee recognition policy during the first quarter, and the culture committee is working on providing an update to the culture award as well too, based on some recommendations from the commission. We replaced one customer account specialist and one lineman, and we added another customer account specialist in the first quarter as well. Again, water, I'll have Jake speak to the cast iron replacement plan for the year. Lead service line inventory project has commenced and is going well. Along with that, we're continuing our Red River source water assessment process. We're in the second phase of that, and then continue to work on additional social media tools and communications for that. We did use the lead service line inventory project and communication through that as well. Again, electric completed the continued net zero carbon initiative, so we completed that actually in October, but it started in the first quarter. Along with that, Commission accepted the electric asset management plan, which is basically a tool to help us grade projects as we move forward with them. And again, finalized and put everything into place for the 2022 budget. Working on the audit, which you'll hear more about tonight. And then continue to review the Commission's financial strength policy as well. Innovation, again, continue to do best practice assessments on cybersecurity, and you'll hear a little bit more about that tonight. Along with that, working on several other items within the innovation section as well, too. So other than that, there are a lot of, we did provide the strategic plan document, and you can see some things in green which are completed. Yellow, they're either in progress or ongoing review on a quarterly basis, and then we got a couple in orange that are things that we still need to continue to work on or start working on as well too. Again, dashboards, you can see all of those as well. Again, continue to work on LED conversions on streetlights, and we had a good first quarter with outages as well, and that'll continue. Again, that's middle of winter, so not a lot of storms and or squirrel outages to look forward to. So we'll see how the next 2 quarters go. Again, we've got energy services dashboard and GIS as well. You'll notice that within the water dashboard, you can see that our monthly cost for chemicals is a lot higher than last year. I just want to point that out as well too. Again, that's a lot, has a lot to do with the quality of water that's coming out of the Red River. So just a note there. We've added in a drought monitoring dashboard as well, so you can look at that. And then of course all of our water leaks that we typically have during the winter season. So again, from a financial standpoint, both electric and water division were doing pretty good during the first quarter, so we'll continue to monitor that as well. Same with the billing and collections, seemed to be pretty common, pretty normal. I did want to point out as well that we had no injuries in the first quarter, which is a good thing. So even with it being icy and all the snow we got, we had a good thing, a good quarter there. And there are some social media statistics in there as well too. Again, Missouri River and MMUA, we've provided their legislative updates. And now I'm going to have Jake come up and speak to the other piece of the general manager's report, which is involving our water main replacement for 2022.
Jake Long, Water Distribution Supervisor. Travis mentioned, just wanted to give an update on our 2022 water main replacement schedule and projects we have planned for this year. Kind of the goofy bidding season and due to the given markets, project increase, lots of different projects shuffled around. And as you can see in the general manager's report, there's a little table showing about 6 different projects that we have planned for this summer. We currently started our first one about a week and a half ago. It's going well. And kind of the main purpose for this update is back in January, we had a project that was, we put out for bid and it came back high, and MPS Commission rejected it in March. And kind of at that time, we didn't know exactly, a lot of different things were going on with increased pricing and different projects. In that same time frame, the cities had some projects that were bid out that came back a little bit higher. Again, projects kind of got shuffled around a little bit due to budget constraints. And but kind of like I said, the main purpose of this update is to kind of give you guys an update that we kind of got it planned, or we have it planned out now. MPS crews are able to complete that project that we had out for bid and rejected it. And overall we're in really good shape. The city had delayed a couple different projects till 2023, so that made scheduling a little bit easier for our crews because their contractors aren't in the same project areas that we will be. We worked with city staff to come up with a restoration plan to decrease some costs on asphalt and curb and gutter, since they plan to come into that same project area in 2023. So overall, given kind of this year with materials and the weather and just increased costs, we're looking to be in pretty good shape. So if you guys have any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Did we have to adjust the length of water main replacement that we were able to complete this year?
We had one other coordinated project with the city of Moorhead that was one project that they got delayed, and it's in a significant area where there was significant cost on really coordinating it together on a concrete street. So that one we also delayed, so it pushed back 1,500 feet of cast iron.
Okay.
But overall, we're sitting over about a mile of pipe that we're going to be replacing this summer.
Our strategic goal is to do 1.25 miles a year. So it's a little less than what we hoped for, yes.
Questions for Jake? Thanks, Jake.
Welcome.
Appreciate it.
One more item for you. I also wanted to let the minutes reflect that Commissioner Paulson and Commissioner Durand were on at 4:34 p.m. Heidi and Joel, are you available? Can you hear us?
Yes, I'm here.
Yep, I can hear you. I'm here.
Great, thank you.
The other thing, I provided a couple one-way communications to the commission. There's been a lot of discussion over the last week or so regarding some concerns with the Mid-Con Independent System Operator. They have some capacity concerns in their footprint. Now again, Moorhead Public Service is part of the SPP footprint, but we kind of are right on the edge of that boundary line. We have utilities across the river in Fargo that are actually part of MISO that could be impacted by this. They are watching it very closely, and if it's really hot out for several days, I'm sure they're going to be doing some load control and or potential rolling blackouts and things like that, or coordinated outages and things like that. The APPA and the Star Tribune have both published an article on it. Wall Street Journal is actually talking about it more holistically for the entire bulk electric system. So East Coast, West Coast is also got those concerns as well. From SPP's standpoint, they've got adequate generation. One thing to note, though, as well, is that their summer generation period is June 15th to September 15th. So they're in a scheduled outage right now for generation. So we could see some issues coming forth in the next month or towards the end of the or into the fall, I guess, as well too. So again, they're watching it, and they'll be communicating with the utility, and we'll communicate with customers as needed on that. So that's all for my report.
Any questions for Travis? I entertain a motion to accept the general manager's report.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and second to accept the general manager's report. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Report on the 2021 Minnesota sales and use tax audit.
Sure.
Mark?
I've done enough speaking for tonight, so I'm going to have Mark come up. Mark, Jerry, and Katie did an excellent job on this and working through it. Probably haven't had one of these audits ever from what Jerry can recall, so I'll let Mark kind of explain the details on it, but good outcome, as good as it can be for an audit this size that they had. So Mark, go ahead.
Thank you, Travis. Mark Moylan and Controller, Council or Commission. I'd just like to present with you, accept a report on the 2021 Minnesota Sales and Use Tax Audit. The state of Minnesota contacted MPS in October, late October of last year, stating that MPS had come up as an entity to be audited for sales and use tax. They sent a preliminary list of items that they were going to review that covered a period from October 1 of 2018 through September 30th of 2021. The audit was completed in roughly about 5 stages. The first was MPS providing the auditor with all of our sales and purchases, invoices, all of the transactions that we charge to customers, all of the fixed asset and capital items that we had completed over the 3-year period. From that, the auditor reviewed the data, then sent back a request for additional items, supporting documentation, as well as sampled items that he was able to pull from our overall selection of all items that we sent to him. The third phase was he sent back, after reviewing all the data, what he anticipated our tax obligation could be before discussions with MPS to provide additional information, justify why we did or did not charge taxes, and just to go over some items. The initial estimate was around $80,000. After we discussed with him, provided some additional information, it dropped to about 45. And again, he asked for more information, allowed us some opportunities to go back and review his findings. We were able to find some more justification for items and eventually lowered everything down to about $42,000. The sales and use findings concentrated on 4 primary areas. The first was MPS's sales to customers. Were they properly taxed? Did we properly collect the taxes, and did we remit them properly? Second was on purchases, items that MPS purchased for its own use, sales and use, or use tax had to be paid on those. What makes MPS unique is that the water division is exempt from taxation. The electric division does pay taxation on just about everything unless it's related to transmission. So there's a lot of nuances as to what the actual use tax is on some of these items. The third item they looked at was our miscellaneous sales to customers, which is a very small sample, but we periodically will sell items to customers. We do have some rent transactions that we do with outside entities where they might rent some land that may be taxable. We had a couple of occasions where we sold some interduct or some wiring to electric companies that were having a hard time finding it. Very, very small sales, less than $200 or $300. And then the last thing they looked at was our capital expenditures to make sure that we paid proper use tax on the capital items that we created. As part of this, they did indicate that we underreported and undercollected taxes on sales to customers over the 3-year period of about $25,000 initially. That was eventually weeded down to about $20,000. MPS did pay the final finding on the middle of May, but the deduction will actually come out at the end of May on the 20th. As part of this, the final finding found about $25,000 worth of charges to customers. MPS policy does state that MPS will back bill customers going back 12 months if an error is identified. So later on in the agenda, there will be an item that you'll be able to discuss. Do we want to back bill customers for these charges, which could be about $2,400? When the issues were not of their doing, it wasn't as a result of inaction that they did or actions that they took. There were some things within the system, some account setups, and some of it goes back to the conversion from our old CIS system back in 2004 into our current system. Some of the back-end database tables came in with incorrect values. They were not identified. They were very, very few and far between, and that'll be an item that is for discussion later on agenda item, I believe, number 14. But at this time, I guess the main point of this is to present and have you accept the audit report. And at this time, I guess I'd entertain any questions.
Joel or Heidi, any questions? Mary?
Mark, quick question. Do we know why we didn't charge or pay that? Or was it just?
Are we talking the customer side or the?
Customer side,
On the
yeah.
customer side, again, a lot of it went back to our conversion back in 2004 from one system to the next system. MPS hasn't been formally audited on the sales side ever, as far as we can tell. The last actual audit on use tax that the state completed was prior to 2008. The auditor was not able to find any records going back further because their system was implemented that they currently use in 2008. But they had no record of a sales and use tax audit occurring at MPS after 2008.
Thank you.
Yes.
Mark, do you want to explain the commonality of the findings, how typical what they found is?
Yeah, the auditor, again, after we discussed and went through everything, you know, I asked him just in general, how did we compare to peers, you know, other entities like us that have been audited? He indicated that the tax rules on use tax are very complicated and that there's guidance in about 5 or 6 directions. And the primary area that we had issues were on software and software maintenance contracts and trying to figure out what the allocation is on those contracts. He was able to give us some information that will be useful going forward. But in the meantime, we did underpay on some software and maintenance contracts because we didn't think the maintenance contract included software and had 25% of it being subject to tax.
Oh.
So we are now paying that tax, and going forward, we should be in better position. The commonality on the customer side was, again, the back-end database things. It was isolated to a handful of accounts that, for some reason, came across back in 2004 with a tax rate of 0. Again, we don't know why. When we look at our system and try and figure out why the tax was undercharged, we couldn't find anything. We went back to the software provider, and they said that there was a table that we cannot see in the back end of the system that actually had a tax rate of 0 for these accounts. So we adjusted that, got rid of that 0, that they would be taxed correctly going forward. And that was the primary cause of most of the issues.
So will that fix, that was my next question, will that fix any future lower tax payment on our side, so we might not see this again possibly?
Well, ideally, again, this brought about a lot of things. Again, we don't test to the detail that they did, And once we discussed with him and asked him, how did you find as much as you did? We were able to find some things that we can implement internally to review what we charge for taxes going forward. The 6 or 8 accounts that we found were incorrect. We got rid of that back-end table that was eliminated, and we monitored them starting in November, December, January. The taxes were assessed correctly. So it did take care of that issue. And again, all the issues have been fine because for the last month I've been monitoring as we do each each cycle billing throughout the month, going in and manually recalculating what the tax should be for the customers. We have a lot of customers who are tax exempt, so we have to maintain a special table for them. We have about 15 to 20 who pay modified taxes because part of their operations is to construct or create a finished good, which isn't subject to sales tax. So instead of paying full sales tax, they might pay half or 75%, so we have to modify and watch those. We also have customers in this area. The state of Minnesota exempts personal electric tax on personal electric usage if it is the primary heat source in houses. So we have about 800 customer accounts that are coded as primary heat. So we have to monitor those to make sure that they aren't assessed taxes in November through April. And then once May came, were they assessed taxes? And we've been monitoring it now for the last month, and everything looks good.
Any other questions for Mark? Thanks, Mark.
Yes. And again, we'll come back up for item 14 to discuss how to handle the potential back billing.
Right. Okay, I entertain a motion to accept that report.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, a motion by Daley, seconded by Paulson, to accept the report on the 2021 Minnesota Sales and Use Tax Audit. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you. Item number 10, summer voluntary watering restrictions. Mr. Schmidt.
Sure, I'll have Mark Pritchard come up and speak to this. Tough to talk about with all the rain we got and the river being as high as it is, but
Yeah.
again, just part of our ongoing effort to be
Transparent.
respectful of our water resources.
Yep.
Mark, go ahead.
Thank you, Travis. Mark Pritchard, Water Plant Supervisor. As Travis had mentioned, each summer, the Moorhead Public Service Commission typically implements voluntary watering restrictions that go in effect in mid-May until the 1st of October. This is part of a broad effort to conserve water, reduce peak demands, and be good stewards of our water supply resources. It also assists the Moorhead Water Treatment Plant by reducing the amount of chemicals needed on a daily and monthly basis for water treatment purposes. It also coincides with MPS's water supply plan and Minnesota statutes on watering conservation rates throughout the summer months. The voluntary water conservation efforts through this plan are really geared for odd and even lawn watering throughout the summer months. So for an example, if an even-numbered address for a home lands on an even day of the month, we recommend and encourage the residents at that home to use their water for irrigation purposes, especially during those specific timeframes. Likewise, for odd-numbered addresses, we also encourage and recommend them to use odd numbers of the month for irrigation and water consumption uses outside the home. For an example, on an average basis, the water plant's peaking factor is approximately 50 to 60% of our winter flows. A vast majority of that considered non-essential water use is in fact due to irrigation of some kind. So that's where a lot of our less than necessary water use goes to in the summertime. And this is, again, a recommendation and an encouragement to be good stewards of the resource. There are a few exemptions from the voluntary conservation efforts. That goes for things such as gardens, flower beds, newly planted trees and shrubs, and newly sodded seeds or lawns, and things of that nature that need to be established before we can, kind of turn back the water use. There are a couple different recommendations that the water treatment plant likes to talk about each year. Grass mowing is another big option to reduce the water loss to evaporation. Leaving your grass mowed at a slightly taller height helps keep the shaded areas around the roots a little bit cooler. You use less water throughout the summer. And then about 1 inch of water per week is all that's necessary to maintain a healthy lawn. So we do recommend that rain gauges be used, and in conjunction with these voluntary conservation efforts, it does amount to a significant amount of water saved each summer. I would also like to provide a brief update on the not so big of a drought this spring. We have had a considerable amount of recharge, as Travis had mentioned here before. For context, in August of 2021, we were looking at implementing and did end up implementing mandatory watering restrictions that were kind of ratcheting up our water supply plan that was mentioned earlier in this item. I'm very happy to report that this spring, due to the large amount of snowpack and the consistent rains that we've received from about the end of March through current date, the entire state of Minnesota is no longer in any kind of drought phase. The last map that I saw that was updated here within the past week, there's less than 1% of the total landmass that is in any kind of mild drought, much less anything at all. So we've recovered significantly. And the river, as of this afternoon, was about 10 times the flow that we had last spring at this time. So we have a considerable amount of water to use. This item, again, is just kind of a reminder for us to be good stewards of the resource and conserve wherever we can.
Thanks, Mark. Any questions, comments? Okay, thanks, Mark.
Thank you.
I entertain a motion to approve the watering restrictions.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion by Hendrickson, seconded by Paulson, to approve summer voluntary watering restrictions. Further discussion? Seeing none. Daley?
Yes.
McDougal?
Yes.
Duran?
Yes.
Paulson?
Yes.
Hendrickson?
Yes.
Thank you. Item number 13, audited financial statements for 2021.
Again, I'll have Mark Moylan, Controller, come up and speak to this. Again, another good audit this year from Ide Bailey, so I'll let Mark speak. And I know we've got somebody on the line from Mankato's office of Ide Bailey to talk through this as well.
Okay, thanks.
All right, thank you, Travis. Members of the commission. Before you have an item to approve the audited 2021 financial statements. This is done annually, and for the last couple of years, it has been performed by audit staff in the Ide Bailey's Fargo office. We do have a contract with them to do audits from 2019 through 2023, and then that will be renewed and looked at in 2023. Again, as Travis indicated, the highlight of this year's audit is that it came back clean, which is to be expected. Expect nothing less. And this year, as part of Ide Bailey's rotation of partners and just to avoid any potential auditor independence issues, the audit was actually assigned to one of their partners in their Mankato office, Jamie Fay. Jamie Fay is a CPA, and she, again, as I indicated, is a partner in the Mankato office, and she coordinated and oversaw the audit, which was performed on site primarily from members of the Ide Bailey Fargo office. And we met a number of times by phone, through emails, corresponded to go over the findings and just make sure that everything was up to their standards and they got everything they needed. I'd like to personally also thank Jerry and Katie, who did a great job from our office, coordinating, gathering all the information, working with the auditors to provide them what they needed. They did a great job. And as you heard earlier, we also were subject to a Minnesota state sales and use tax at the same time. So we completed 2 audits, primarily during the first quarter of this year up through early May. And so at this time, I'd like to have Jamie Fay present to you their formal presentation and just give you her thoughts on how the audit went.
That sounds great. Thank you. It looks like you have it up on your screen, so I don't need to share anything. So we're going to step through the executive summary. So first and foremost, I'm Jamie Fay. As you've heard, I'm actually located physically in our Mankato, Minnesota office. I was in the Fargo office of Ide Bailey for about 9 years and then transferred down here for the last few. So have been in the governmental practice for most of my career here, and I work closely with the city of Moorhead Moorhead and with the MPS team. And so it was a very seamless transition, really to have me oversee the audit. Everything went very smoothly, as you've heard, and I'm sure you're not surprised. Things went really, really well. So we were pleased to work with the MPS again and get through the audit. So since you've already heard about the sales and use tax audit, we might as well keep talking about audits because that's the theme of the night. So the first page of this executive summary we're going to go through really talks about the audit recap. So what does it mean when we come in and do an audit? Really, when we come in and do an audit, we select a sample of expenditures. We do some calculations to say what we think numbers should be compared to where they've been in the past and kind of get some comfort over that. We do not look at every single transaction. I think that Mark and his team probably found that the sales and use tax audit was probably a lot more granular than a financial statement audit. We have a materiality threshold. So we didn't look at every single transaction, but when we did look at things, we gained comfort over, okay, are we comfortable with these revenues? We do a risk-based approach to our auditing. So thinking about where are the biggest areas that are potential risks for the entity. We do extra auditing there and kind of go from there. So really the cliff notes of this is we don't look at every single thing, but we look at enough to get comfortable. So if you go to the next slide, the timeline for the audit this year, we do planning in like December through February timeframe. That really consists of phone calls and taking a look at some preliminary information. We have some kind of processes that we do when we roll information forward. And then year-end testing we did in March and April. We had field work the week of March 7th. So really post COVID world, and we're not quite there yet, but kind of coming out of the COVID world, we are really doing kind of a variety of in-person versus remote working, and hopefully that has been going well. And so we do a lot of coordination over email, but we also come on site when it makes sense, and we enjoy those site visits as well. And then reporting, we issued the audit opinion on May 3rd, so got it done, buttoned up, reviewed, and everything was done. So we did timing expectations, we did significant transactions, and like I said, we test on a risk-based approach, so we take a look at really the entity and where we need to focus our testing. From a year-by-year standpoint, that doesn't tend to change, so every once in a while we'll have a few new things we test, but usually it's pretty standard year-by-year. So if you go forward 2 slides, as you've already heard, the audit opinion is kind of the big thing. So you've received a clean opinion. That is an unmodified opinion. And what that means is the financial statements are materially accurate. You can have findings or some differences in your audits that don't necessarily lead to a difference in an opinion. But if you had something we were trying to recalculate and it was materially misstated, this would not be a clean opinion. So great job to the team. Clean opinion is exactly what you want and what you've gotten in the past. So the next slide, we'll talk about those findings. MPS didn't have any. A lot of times when I present to governments, especially in Minnesota, we have a few findings, whether it be something that wasn't in accordance with state statute, or maybe we posted some journal entries, but we didn't have anything here. So no findings, hats off to Mark and his team. You write the financial statements, everything's buttoned up and clean when we get it. So that makes our jobs very easy. So then if you go forward 2 slides, we're going to talk about cash and investments for MPS. So if you look at these graphs, and this is really where we're going to look at the meat and potatoes of the numbers, but we're going to do it in a way that is colors, because not everybody likes the numbers as much as accountants do. So you can see that the investments jumped up a little bit, total of about a little over 45 million in the end of the year for total between operating cash, bond reserves, and investments. And you can just see the last 10 years kind of creeping up there. You can see when I talked to Mark earlier about this is something that's expected in an audit. If we were to come in and you would have a significant increase or decrease in your cash and you had no kind of explanation for it, you said, well, I don't really know. Same with expenditures and revenues. Then we would ask more questions. In this case, Mark was like, yep, we're saving for something. That's why our cash is going up. So that makes total sense. Next slide is operating cash. So this is just that operating cash breakout. We do have water as blue and then electric is the gray part. So the total operating cash was just about 13 million here. So fairly consistent from what it's been the last couple years. You can see it jumped in 2018, but 19, 20, and 21 are pretty consistent. The next page is if you take this home and do some good reading, if you want to understand why cash and investment reserves are important, it contributes to a favorable bond rating. So if you're going to take out new debt or refinance debt, that's important. Produces some investment income. And then really the biggest kind of area that you want to look at when you're looking at your cash and investment reserves is a cushion. So if the last couple of years have taught us anything, it's that we don't know what's coming, and having a little bit of a cushion is important to be able to kind of get through places if you have a shortfall at one point or another that you didn't expect. So another way that we look at cash is on the next slide. So days cash on hand, you can see, and this really just coordinates along with the cash balances. So the cash balances, as we said, electric was about 9.7 million, water was about 3.2. And you are at, for electric is the blue, it's 369 days, and water is about 670 days. So that really is the cash per on hand per the days. All right. Any questions so far? Good. Okay, let's go to the next color. So this is going to talk about operations. So one more slide. There you go. So this is the electric fund. So we have the top line is operating revenues, then it's operating expenses, coming down to operating income, which is the second from the bottom, and then the transfers out. The transfers out, you can see it's very consistent for the last 10 years. And really overall, this graph doesn't show a ton of change for the last 5 years. A little bit of ebbs and flows, but pretty consistent overall. And then when you look at the next slide, this is really looking at the electric fund margins. So dollars are big, and it's hard to kind of wrap your head around what that means as far as, okay, we've got these big dollars, but we also have big expenses. How does that work? So operating margin is really operating income divided by the operating revenue. So that's the operating margin, that 32.8%. The net margin, which is a lot smaller, that green one, 13.4%, that is net income over operating revenue. So net income is kind of that bottom line number after you take out those expenditures. Next one is same exact look and feel. This is the water fund. So operating revenues, operating expenses, operating income. This you can see a little bit of an upturn in those revenues this year, just a hair of an increase in expenses, but a little bit more in revenues. So that operating income did go up just a hair. So a little bit over 4 million for the water fund. So then looking at the margins on the next page, same look and feel. The operating margin is about 36% and net margin is about 22%. And again, when we test things like this in these funds, we look at, okay, here is how much you sold or how much you used, like in the terms of the water fund. How many gallons did you use? How did that revenue come up to how many gallons you used? Does it make sense? And everything we were asking about we were able to get comfortable with the answers. So that's how we test these types of things. So the next slide is about debt service. So in terms of debt service, you want to make sure you have enough cash flow coming in to make your payments for principal and interest. If you get a ratio above 1.0, that means that you are able to have enough cash to cover your payments. So 1.0 is kind of the bottom number that you want to have. If you only have one, that means you have $1 coming in to pay $1 of debt. So you're at 4.14 for 2021. This number can fluctuate a lot depending on what's in the debt and what's coming in as well, but no concerns there either. So there's the last 10 years. And with that is everything I have prepared, what we that we went through. Any questions on anything I went through or anything that's come up?
I have a question.
Yes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Could you go back to that last slide real quick?
Mm-hmm.
So we have 1.35 for 2020 and then 4.14. Why is there such a big margin there? Just kind of curious.
Yep, that's a good question.
I mean, it's good, but I'm just wondering why.
Why the jump?
Well, part of it has to do with MPS's philosophy on upcoming capital projects. So as Jamie indicated and through our conversations, MPS has an upcoming project to implement AMI. An AMI, those may have a life of less than 20 years, 25 years, but they're a large dollar value to replace all those. And that's not the kind of thing that we want to bond for. And in fact, we'd have a hard time getting bonding 20 years for a 15 to 20-year asset. So our intention over the last few years has to slowly build up the reserves in cash so that when it's time to do the AMI project, which will be coming to you later as we go through that process, I think we've gone through 1 or 2 rounds right now of review. We're going to be implementing that process, and a lot of that cash, we expect between $8 to $10 million, will disappear within 3 years. And then other larger projects, which have a longer lifespan, will be going out to the bonding market. We've got an SPP reactor project coming up for $12 million, so we'll be going out to bond that. We've got some of the water main replacements, feeder line between here and the wells at the Wells station out on the other side of Dilworth, between Dilworth and Glendon. Again, a long life asset, and we'll be looking at bonding at that. So we've built up quite a bit the last few years, but the expectation is within the next few, as we get to budget season, you'll see that there are plans that it's going to drop considerably.
Thank you. Yep, good. That's good.
Mark and Jamie, would the moratorium on disconnections also impact this debt service coverage?
We found that it really didn't. We haven't had larger than expected losses. Our write-offs have been about what they were in line pre-COVID. So I think overall, between the actions that we took to allow customers to extend over 24 months, the availability of assistance through the state of Minnesota, through government programs, it actually helped a lot of customers who were having issues paying their bills get their bills paid. So the last few years, like last year, we bumped up our reserve for losses because we just weren't sure where it was going to be, by about 60,000 on the electric side and about 10 on the water side. This year we went back to our normal 5,000 to 6,000 per month because that's what we found was actually occurring during the month. And as we've been monitoring it through May so far this year, we're still in line with where we were back in 2019 pre-COVID.
Excellent.
Yeah, and we've been seeing that a lot too. There was a lot of anticipation of we don't know what those are going to look like. What are these going to do to our numbers? And it hasn't had a ton of impact as we would expect. The other thing I was going to note about that debt service coverage is I believe that there was an early payoff of some bonds in 2020, which that would impact that number to go down because it was, I believe, about $7 million that did get paid off. So that was some additional dollars that got paid off in 2020, which would drop that ratio. So if you were to take that out, that 2020 number would actually be about 4.7. So it would be kind of trending the way you would expect it to be.
Heidi or Joel, do you have any questions?
Well, I would like to take the opportunity to thank Mark and his team. As per expected, and as we've had in the past, we had a great audit experience. They were very accommodating. We know that when we come in, and especially when you're in the middle of a sales and use tax, you're getting a lot of requests, and you were very timely with everything, and it was a great experience to us. So hats off to your team. We appreciate it.
Thank you. And again, I'd like to commend Katie and Jerry for all the hard work that they did working on 2 simultaneous audits. It was quite a bit of work, but they got everything, as Jamie indicated, in a timely manner. And we're try to think that we're very well organized within the finance and accounting department here at MPS.
And thank you, Jamie, for your work.
Absolutely. All right. Have a great night.
Well,
Jamie.
thank you. Okay, I'd entertain a motion to approve the audited financial statements.
So moved.
Okay, I have a motion by Heidi, seconded by Sebastian McDougall, to approve the 2021 audited financial statements. Discussion? Seeing none. Daley?
Yes.
McDougall?
Yes.
Duran?
Yes.
Paulson?
Yes.
Hendrickson?
Yes.
Thompson, yes. Item number 14, approve exception to commission policy on billing for overcharges. Is it you again, Mr. Moylan?
Yep, again, I'll start it quick and Mark can take over. Again, this is just to, again, discuss the sales and use tax audit, and if the commission is wanting to not go back and reimburse MPS from underbilling the tax portion from the customer. So again, our recommendation and talking with the commission and council, or excuse me, with commissioners and Chair Thompson was to bring it to the commission to discuss and take action on it. Mark, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Travis. Mark Moylan, and Controller. Again, we brought this to you for transparency and just because our policy states that we will back bill whenever errors are discovered or undercharges for 12-month period, up to 12 months on an undercharge. For overcharges, if MPS overcharges a customer for some reason, we will go back as long as we have records. In this case, back to 2006 if necessary. So to comply with the formal policy, which doesn't allow any wiggle room for things that are beyond, customers' actions or inactions, we wanted to bring this before you for discussion. Based on the strict policy and the timing of the audit findings and the amounts that we paid, we would be able to technically go back and back bill customers back probably till 12 months from now, so back to June of last year for any uncollected charges. Now, we did make corrections to these accounts in November, December, so in most cases, all we'd be able to collect would be really what occurred from June through November. So we're talking about 4 months. After we calculated and reviewed everything, we determined that we would be able to collect or back bill, based on policy, approximately $2,243 to roughly 228 customers between 64 cents, or an average of 64 cents, and then another 10 customers charges between $573, and one commercial customer up to $1,300. So our intent was to bring this for you to let you discuss, do we want to do that? Do we want to consider not assessing this because the audit is so unique? It hasn't occurred for at least almost 18 years or 14 years. And the items were not as a result of actions or inactions on the customer's part.
Thanks for laying that out there for us. Any comments on this situation? We should discuss it. Go ahead. Mary Daly.
Thank you. I guess that because it was not due to any negligence on the part of customers, whatever, I would like to see us just absorb it and move on. I think that to assess the customers for our mistake or however you want to word that, I don't know if it was a mistake or oversight. I don't know. I would prefer to not pass that back to the customers.
And as I indicated, we did correct all of the issues that they discovered. And again, the customer accounts have been properly billed starting in November when the audit really got fully underway and we were given details as to what he was finding.
Mr. Hendrickson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. What was the total amount again?
The total related to customer undercharges was about $26,000 for between county tax and state tax. And that goes back 3 years. And because the audit was done in May, it would be 3.5 years back. Again, the policy as written in the formal policy says we can back bill undercharges for up to 12 months. So it, again, would not allow us to go back to the full period that was covered by the audit. And again, would limit us to about 5 to 6 months worth of collections that were undercharged back from June through the time we corrected all the accounts in November.
You said it was about $2,200?
$2,200, less than 10% of what we were assessed.
I agree with Commissioner Daly. If it wasn't the fault of the customers, it's our fault, and that's the maximum is $2,200. I just think we should just absorb it too. Personal thought.
I would agree with Commissioners Hendrickson and Daly as well.
And Madam Chair, I would agree as well. I believe we would probably spend more resources than it's worth to try to collect those dollars. And given that this is a unique situation, I don't see any need to pursue those payments.
I guess I kind of echo everybody else's opinion on it as well. And it sounds like we've made the adjustments, so hopefully we won't see it again.
Right.
I think we just absorb it and call it good.
Yep. And that's I come down on that side as well. So, so we're going to approve an exception to the policy. And so I'll need a motion to do that.
I would
So moved.
move that we make a one-time exception to the policy because of what was found in the audit.
I'll second that.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Paulson. Any further I have a motion by Daley, seconded by Paulson, to approve an exception, a one-time exception due to an audit on the commission's policy for billing on overcharges. Any further discussion? Did I capture that motion? Okay, thank you.
Got it.
Got it? All right. Daley,
Yes.
McDougal,
Yes.
Durand,
Yes.
Paulson,
Yes.
Hendrickson,
Yes.
Thompson, yes. Okay, item number 15, closed meeting for executive session. This meeting will now be closed for executive session as authorized by Minnesota Statute Section 13D.05 Subdivision 3D to discuss information technology security report at Moorhead Public Service. Do we expect action to be taken?
Chair.
Okay, so as no action will be taken and no further action is expected in open session, therefore we will adjourn upon conclusion of executive session. I entertain a motion to move to close the meeting for executive session.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion by Hendrickson, seconded by Daley, to close the meeting for executive session. Daley,
Yes.
McDougal,
Yes.
Duran,
Yep.
Paulson,
Yes.
Hendrickson,
Aye.
Thompson. Okay, this meeting is now closed. Thank you.